Trying to make sure the background looks good so that I can just like keep this screen up. There we go. All right. I'm not even like I just want to yap. I'm well medicated right now. I got a lot of caffeine in me. I just want to talk about Apex Legends and what I've kind of thought of and what I think is going to be happening for the future of this game and Legends in that regard and how excited I am. Hello Messiah, good to see you. Thank you for dropping by. Um Jesus Christ, I can spell today. I'm literally just going to yap. I probably won't answer questions because I will lose my train of thought, and I struggle to keep it. So I apologize if I'm not reading chat right now. I hope everyone's having a good time. Messiah, good to see you. Glad you got your spot back. Um, but yeah, straight up, the way that the legend bands have changed everything in Apex. Um, there's a good way as well to look at a new part of the game, which is team compositions and the value of a team composition. At like, this is all applying. By the way, this entire thought process, this entire line of thought is meant to be for talking about the best of the game. Um, played to its peak with the highest skill cap. Um, that's how I look at this game because, frankly, that's what I aim for. I don't always, hit that, and I know it's impossible to be a perfect player, but I still think striving for that with the mindset knowing that it's impossible, but doing it anyway, I think is the best mindset to take. That's how I take gaming. That's how I take competition. That's how I try to take everything in life. Um, but I wanted to just straight up yap about the fact that the game is entirely changed. Apex Legends competitively has changed forever, and I think we saw this at the Open. Um, we're already seeing an adaptation in the composition meta, and I thought that wouldn't happen until after the first split. Um, but to put it simply, Sparrow, Alter, um, being the two most recent characters added to this game, actually changed the entire mentality of characters, compositions, and fundamentals to a step that I don't think any other video game has truly gotten to. Mostly because of Alter, and that is undeniably awesome, especially to see in a game like a BR, because this level of specification, this level of detail put down to the individual in the moment, in the location, like the level of detail that the game has to go down to, and the fact that we have the same level of champion mastery at the same time in the hero shooter element. A lot of hero shooter BRs failed because they failed to provide anything that wasn't just a shooter mentality. And that is a not a failure on the development of these games, but just a learned understanding that you actually, if you want to get to that level of detail in a competition, you have to care about the fundamentals more than anything else. And Respawn for a long time cared about the fundamentals, but they cared about the fundamentals of just a BR shooter. And it makes sense because the competition at the time was H1Z1, um, Fortnite, of course, but no one really understood the skill ceiling that was available with Fortnite in the build, and build battles, and the level of technicality and reflex that it took to actually create those fights, that is something that was just unparalleled with the rest of the industry at the time. And one of the biggest reasons why Fortnite popped off was that, and then they branched immediately into the kind of more Roblox side of games, where it started out as one thing, it ended up being another, and it was mostly just a creation based platform now for multiple people internationally to use and recognize. And I think that's a wonderful thing, by the way. I think Fortnite has become a wonderful thing because of that. I think that's an amazing, amazing thing. Um, but it's not the same BR that it used to be. H1Z1 failed to do anything that wasn't just the basic BR elements, and it didn't have the longevity, development, or foresight, frankly, to expect that the community would leave it if it didn't adapt. And they didn't adapt. They fell. Apex popped up out of nowhere at a good time, and they offered the hero shooter. They offered the familiarity of specific characters, compositions, interactions, and there were a lot of cool interactions. There's a lot of cool lore. It really was a storytelling element that was ingrained with the Titanfall storyline and other storylines. And then they took the legends and gave them kind of basic concepts. When you think about the original 8 characters, let me actually go to those. Hold on, let me move this. When you go to the original 8 characters, they're just kind of different random characters, and that's perfectly fine for a brand new game, especially being the first of its kind with being a hero. Not the true first of its kind. I think there were a few games before it that actually had hero shooter BR type things. I might be wrong. I don't actually know the specifics, but I do know that Apex is easily the most popular of them, and quickly growing. But when you look at the original 8 characters, there's just not a lot of detail about them that screams anything that wasn't just random characters that were created and kind of very wide branches of the first base of the tree, right? The first branches of a big tree are the strongest and the largest, and they branch out wide and far so they can have smaller branches later and make the tree bigger and get more sun and absorb more nutrients. It's natural that things happen that way. We as humans are not immune to that level of detail and construction that exists in the creation of things. That there's a formula to creating things. That's what math is just a way to number that. Crazy right now. Also, Rev's gone. Fuck it, don't bring him back. Thank God. Because there's the immunity bug right now. That's it. So to date this video, it is May 12th, 2025, 6 days into the season 25. And like when you look at going back to the original 8 characters, there's these big branches, and slowly they changed what kind of basics were added when they added Octane, because they're like, we're gonna do things with movement, we're gonna make characters faster, and so like we're gonna create a new gas pedal, and a new branch was born, and Octane movement became this big thing, and then there's this kind of understanding of movement that separated from the game of the battle royale and the game of Apex, and changed it into a understanding the engine game that a lot of movement players, I think, have that itch for. Like movement players over all games. Like if you play movement in one game, cool, but if you play movement in every game, you like feel the engine in a way. I don't know how else to describe it, but you feel how the engine plays, and this mastery of that. That's what I love. That's what I push for. That's why I love the movement in this game. And that was kind of born from how fast is fast, right? Like, now that we can change things, how much can we break things. And that's what we do as a community, as people who play video games, is we break games because they're not designed. Um, no matter how hard you try, it's not designed for the amount of people in mind, because you don't know the size of your audience truly. It is That's just how things are. And when you do know, then your audience might fluctuate and change, and so you have to just kind of make a game. So when they make a game, what do they make? They make 1,000 different ideas, scratch out 999 of them, and then actually design one after a few months, and then tweak it in a million different ways. It's a long process of trying to create, especially when there's a series of math and there's a web of characters that are interlocked, not just in lore, but in mechanics, where you take copy paste mechanics from one to another, and and uh like then you add things to it, you make it a variable, or variant, sorry, of the other one, and then like you have to find where people copy paste things, and you understand where that is. That's part of feeling the engine, that's part of understanding the characters. Um and it's this it's this I don't know how to describe it. It's like an interlocking web of design based off of how the game is designed in a fundamental mechanical sense, and then also in a practical sense, that mastery of this thing that is like movement and the skill cap or whatever it might be of each legend, not just the individualistic elements of the legends themselves, but the idea of team compositions all are interlocked in this core concept. It's so hard to describe this in my head, but it's this interlocked concept, of just expanding and growing the game. And that is what Respawn has done recently with Sparrow and Alter, in ways that have changed and branched Apex into a new beast entirely. The legend bands specifically are in the competitive sense and at the highest tier of gameplay, where everyone is playing at the best, where everyone is playing with every detail in mind. And it's this from the beginning, from the first foundational steps of this game to the very last detail. Everything is thought out, has a reason, has been practiced hundreds of times. When you see this, why do these two characters change everything? Why is it that we have how many characters now? We're over 20. I know that. You have these last two. Why did these last two change everything? And that is actually stemmed from another change that was made, which is the 5 unique changes to each of the classes of the characters. And there's even a very interesting way to look at them in terms of value now, especially with legend bands. So speaking of, going to the actual topic at hand, the legends and how they are valuable in comp, and why they look so strong in certain ways, and yet what are their weaknesses, and why do these weaknesses matter, is the natural evolution of a meta, and it is changing everything about Apex. This game is totally different now than what it used to be. Like, if you remember playing day one, or week one, or month one, season 0, season 1, season 2, I even all the way into season like 6, all the way up to about season 6, I swear to God, if you played any time during that, and you played now, as at the same time, if you're playing in the same straight, time travel is real, and you're playing it at the same time, and you're two people playing, it's like two different games. Apex and Apex, it's not even Apex, it's just a different game. You look at those two things, they would be totally different and yet kind of the same. So they'd be competition. but they're totally different games. It'd be like a CS versus Overwatch in the shooters category. Totally different. We are now at that point with Apex, and I want to talk about the impact that they're having with their design and why I think this game is going to pop the fuck off. And I'm not just saying that to be like hopeful and be like, "Oh, I think this game's going to do well." I'm not I don't think there's going to be another game like this ever. And I really hope people play it now and really get good at it, because this game shapes so many things into strategy and practical strategy and the level of detail. And I think it is one of the coolest games ever. And I want to encourage people to play this game. So, how do you, in a high elo setting, how do you look at a character that is valuable with legend bands? Because it used to be that the metas were the best compositions where you had one, two, maybe three compositions, because you had a definitive, most effective thing available meta. It's a backronym, I know, but the definitive meta was blank, blank, blank. And then because of how that played, there were resources left on the map or resources that could counterplay it. And the development of the meta was pick a thing, someone counters, that thing's actually better and it counters itself as well. So it's a better composition. And then it would just keep doing that till we had one that was just, okay, we found a dead end of characters. So you have these three characters, like Gibby, Octane, Bloodhound. They just had the three best things for their kind of roles. That was where roles really started to develop, and this mindset um of just like characters do jobs, and we make compositions around what jobs we need to do and how impactful they are, and that's how we decide who wins the positions to win the game. And then the details come down to gunplay. It's like, great, Apex Legends, and it was a really, really good game at that time. Like, I don't think Apex has ever been a bad game. I think it's had some bad metas, but I think a lot of good games have bad metas. I think they're necessary for game development. It's good to know that a game is flawed, because then it lowers expectation. And I think it's also really good because it shows that the devs need the community and the community needs the devs. One cannot exist without the other, especially in business. But that means we have to appreciate the details on both sides. And the details, the complaints that have been put out from the community, I think were warranted and overdone over the years. But I think it was probably for the better, because being harsher got more things for us that ended up being seeds planted and sown uh, later, and now we have the game we have. I think it's a beautiful thing that's happened, and props to everybody. But like, also, yeah, it's still not perfect. It'll never be perfect, but like, it's made by human beings. I never expected it to be perfect, so I'm gonna have fun with it. The way to look at characters for value is, now if you look, now that we have so many characters, now that we have legend bands, how do these connect? Why have they changed? Now with legend bands, there are characters you cannot play, and it turns out compositions are made of three characters for a reason. They're not made up of two characters and then a third. They're made up of three characters because you need each thing to pick and choose. And so you have to kind of look at each character now as a tool rather than a machine. Because you used to look at compositions as a machine. You had three things, each person would do this thing, and so you had to position in certain ways, you had to play in certain angles, and you had to pressure in in decisive manners. And this is what Sweet Dreams is really good at when he IGL'd. Um, he this is I think why he was popular. Other people were playing fundamentals, he was playing compositions, and and that was just the extra mile at the time because fundamentals was still the most important thing, no doubt about it. But the the compositions then added that extra edge that really like pushed high level players to adapt. Um, this is this is why there was differentiation between um, like Hal and Sweet. There's also a reason why Hal won more was because he was so locked in on the fundamentals that a lot of people were just leaving mistakes to be punished. And because of this, it was always a punish game. So for years, it was just a lot of back and forth, punish, 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 punish. And then characters started developing that were anti-punish characters, that were mistake recoveries. Notably Newcastle. Newcastle was um, when Newcastle was introduced, there was this concern, I think, that we've become Fortnite. That's what I really remember of that time. I wasn't playing a lot during it, and what I was playing, I was not the Newcastle. I think, yeah, yeah, it was, yeah, I remember that. I don't know. But it was just like that was around when Stormpoint was introduced, if I'm not mistaken. But that meta shifted the dynamic of team fighting because team fighting suddenly we had an objective for team fighting. It wasn't just kill team, move forward. It wasn't just send it 24/7. It like the idea of holding zone became more valuable. The Seer meta introduced, I can't remember which metas came first or everything in order, but talking about different metas, like Seer meta was really when this idea of loot becoming a highly valuable resource um like took over, because now your characters didn't matter. Getting the Q, you took damage, you got flashed, and you couldn't use your abilities, and it canceled whatever action you were doing, which was really fucking annoying. But it was like this idea of like you get to punish people who are now you know doing something that wouldn't be that it's hard to punish otherwise. um and when you look at some of the characters that were released around that time, because Maggie and Seer were released around similar times, if I'm not mistaken, uh and then Fuse as well. It was it Fuse or was it Ballistic? I think it was Fuse. um like these characters were kind of a different step in, well, we don't actually have to have the position, we can just move you. And when that moving of people, because it got very stationary, it got very hold building, stay building, fight building, you go building because of ports into this. Well, you don't actually need a building, you kind of hold around buildings and punish people for sitting in the buildings or sitting in too small of a building. So suddenly the amount of space you needed was a change. And then countering that amount of space, how do you counter people that are even more spread out? You either hit very close individually, but if they're too close and they can pinch you back on that initial hit, then how do you counter that? Well, you have to get wider than them. You have to make sure that they have to move into a certain way. So getting even wider, opening up, Fuse, Seer, this kind of run in, get the kills, or isolate and then target and then fight, uh, were just a total shift in that mentality. So shooting, gunplay, the 3v3, and the 3v3 really kind of opened up at that point. This idea of, okay, fighting versus fighting. Because at the highest level, we stopped third partying each other like 24/7 because everyone was dying right away. And then it was really random winners. So how did you decide to not have these kind of random winner situations? Well, we're going to play specific spots. We're not actually going to fight over there just because there's kills. we're gonna hold our position, and that was very very early on. That's the core, and that was like taken from H1Z1. That was taken from other BRs. That's a survival concept, and so this blossomed, like that's a core thing that's happened, and then it expanded in this fighting way, and we did it by isolating individual characteristics, individualing the three in or like individualizing, pulling this concept into the 3v3. Why does that matter? This is where compositions were important, because now you needed to be able to fight, period, amen, and you needed to be able to survive and have an endgame win condition. So now you have prerequisites, and with this, the ALGS format understood this set of prerequisites, and you have two win conditions. You have two ways to gain points, and then the match point format specifically is what really differentiates Apex Legend. I think is the final bridge between old Apex and new Apex is the match point format. In terms of, I think that was the first real break. I don't know if it's the one only break. It was the first, like, okay, things are truly changing here. We are our own individual game. We are not just a BR. We are a hero shooter BR. And the going back, that 3v3, that composition becoming important. Now you had to be able to rotate, because the best way to survive a 3v3 is to leave. And the reason that's the best way is because every time you take damage, consider your team's total health. Let's say, and this was also when random armors were a thing at times, so like we're gonna ignore that. But let's say your team's total health sits at, on average, because of all of the metas and all of the time, the average health probably sits at around 180 HP going into a mid game. There are people who have been ahead, and there are always going to be people who are ahead. That's what loot distribution's for. And that's how Evo has also changed. Evo is kind of the next step of that evolution. Anyway, but the 3v3, the composition had to survive. You have your health bars, your team's total health. Everyone sits at about 180. What does that mean? If everyone sits around 180 average, your team's health sits at about 540. I think is the math. Yeah, 540. 540 health as a total team. Now, health in a BR has another element to it. The lower you are, the higher your chance of dying to random encounters on an initial basis. Because sometimes random encounters, like if you consider this game like a roguelike, or if you consider this game like a speed run, or something like that, it's a measuring of these resources. You have your total health. The lower your health gets, the more likely you are to die. And dying is how you lose. It's the only lose condition, is all three of your players dying. There's no other way to lose Apex Legends than all three of your teammates, all three of your team, you and your teammates, dying. There's two ways to gain points, but there's one way to lose. Interesting, but also makes sense. That's what the nature of the BR does. So what are the two ways to get points? Placing first place and getting kills. And varying placement points and getting kills. There's no core way to calculate how many kills you will get guaranteed. It is a non-guaranteed point-based system. Because of this, and that's just because of how many variables there are in the game, but because of this, we have to use placement points as a kind of a base score line of units. So if you look at a game of Apex, getting, like for comp, getting 10th nets you 2 points. Getting 11th through 15th gets you 1 point. 16th through 20th gets you 0. The bottom half of the lobby will only score 1 point. With that being said, they also offer up, like, that's not all the math. You might think, wow, it must be really easy to get points, and you know, just getting first, you should always be getting the most points on that basis. That's not true, because the other half of that coin, the flip side of that coin of the 1.0 point for the bottom 10, 5 placement points in total are distributed. I think there's 54 placement points in total if you added all the placement up. 5 are given to the bottom 10 teams. So if you place bottom 10, there's a 50% chance you get 1 point. That is awful. What you also do is feed the lobby, you feed the kills 3 points. So if you get 16th and die, your team has distributed 3 points to the lobby, and you have gained nothing. You went -3 in placement, is kind of the -3 points in placement. That's really bad. Getting 1 point doesn't make it better. It's still -2. Being negative in a game where placement is important when you are 5% of the lobby is absurdly bad, because that means you had a lot of people you could pass. If you rolled the dice, it would have been better at times. Like, that's how bad it can be. That's how bad the approach was to the format of how everyone was playing in the game. Excuse me. I don't care if that doesn't make sense, but still, I'm just going with it. The bottom half of the lobby feeds 30 points. So 30 points are being given to the rest of the lobby. It can also go back to the bottom half of the lobby, which is why teams fight. This is something that Twerkaholics abused. Is they looked at kind of that opening of points, and they said, we're just going to try to catch people off guard, use that as our advantage. We're a very strong fighting team. We're going to punish any mistakes that we catch them, that we catch because they're caught off guard, and then we're going to thrive. And because of the pressure that other people had and their confidence going into fights, they flew through winner's side. It, like, genuinely impressed me how well they did. They also got that's what playing for the
This place screams Artemis. She would love it there.
that would Jesus Christ, that threw me off so much. Um but they're feasting off the bottom 30 points. Here's the problem. If you place the bottom 10, you are a part of that 30 points. So you can only get 27. Like, at max, you can get 27 plus 1, 28. That's the highest you can score in the bottom half without respawns. You can add a few points for respawns if you want to be technical. Respawn farming is not a viable method in competitive because it requires a level of coordination between two teams that is not allowed as default, or a level of mistakes that are allowed to be made that are so improbable in a competitive setting that it's considered just mathematically impossible to see. So you don't count that. Is it possible? Yes. Has it been done before in ranked games? Absolutely. Is it viable for the conversation of the highest skill ceiling? Not at all. So you can get 28 points at best by placing in the bottom 10, feasting like that. Why is that? And that's per game. Why is that important? Because when you need to get top 10 each lobby to move forward, you need on average about 6 points per game minimum at the highest level. Some lobbies are different. If it pulls lower than that, that is because there is a team that is just hoarding points. They're doing so well that they're hoarding points. So normally you'll see about 6 points per game average minimum, sometimes higher depending on the quality. If it's a very even from first place to 20th, very even lobby and competitive skill, it can get up to about 8 points. And those games are crazy. When you're getting close to 40 points in the bottom half, that's how well rounded that fucking lobby is. Oh my god, those games are incredible to watch. I love those. Um, but compositions and characters now have another meaning. That's how this is how you measure out the second part, the fighting, the survivability, and um the ability to reduce point loss. Um, and how do you do that? You actually can't do that by a specific character. You have to do that as a composition. How does that affect compositions? How does this affect the 3v3? How does this affect everything I was talking about before? This connects by uh, creating win conditions. Twerkaholics played compositions that played around the lower point conditions of the lobby, and they farmed points off of it because nobody else was playing that way. If someone else was playing that way, they would have not done well. Two teams doing that in one lobby can actually decimate lobby quality, and they will both often they will qual. One of them will qual sometimes, but if it's a good lobby, if it's that higher quality lobby like I was talking about, they will not qual because teams are playing their life more because they're playing for more points and less point loss. There's less of that variance to actually eat up. Now you're starving. Now your comp's not based around the rest of the lobby. Then you get flushed out, and that's what happened to Twerkaholics in the finals. It was something I expected. They made some composition switches, and they actually did well for one of the games. I'm pretty sure. Um, they ended up getting still low placement because they were behind too many. They were behind 2 games in a 6-game series. That's pretty fucking bad. That's 33% of the games you miss, pretty much. Um, and and you have to have confidence. And that was the start of the match, so they had a real rough time. So their compositions were based around getting more kills. Now, how do you base a composition around getting specific objectives? Is you look at the resources on the map that are available to you. This is where you value legends. And this is where Sparrow and Alter have changed everything again. I said that previous. I haven't really gotten to it yet. I've been building up a lot of different things to get to the final moments here. Alter and Sparrow have gone a detail further. When I talked about all those details leading up to it, you maximize all the details. You look at the skills ceiling, not the skill floor, and that the skill ceiling is based entirely around the fundamentals, chained all the way forward, pushed all the way to the top, making this tree, this web, all interconnected. Sparrow and Alter can do one thing better than any other character in the game at current, and that is fight 3-dimensionally. Now, before anyone's like, well, Octane, Valk, Ash, even Wraith with ports, Horizon, Fuse can be argued, Vantage, definitely, Newcastle very much argued, even Lifeline in that argument, even Loba in that argument. You might be saying, there's a lot of ways characters can fight 3-dimensionally. Absolutely, that is true, but they were all based around doing one specific thing, and that was be a part of a 3-man squad that was going to last a whole season. So they wanted to do one or two things very well and just kind of not do the others. And what I mean by not do the others is if you took every character and looked at the position of a map and fundamentals of the game, and everyone was playing a dummy, had no abilities, it was just gunplay like H1Z1, you would have this core concept that's taken from its roots, the BR Survival Classic. That's what I talked about previous. That's what these characters were based of. It was around that, and then they branched slightly. Sparrow and Alter come from the other side of this. They come from the hero side. They really are they are heroes of the hero shooter. They are not heroes in a BR. And that is true because of um Alter's tactical ability and Sparrow's passive. Why are they played in pro play? Is because the rest of their kit fulfills fundamental needs of compositions and survivability and map rotations based around the POIs, whatever it might be, whatever map it might be. They fulfill other basic needs of the character of other roles and can accomplish many things uniquely, more adaptably than other characters. And as a matter of fact, Alter is so strong going into season 25. She was a ban in almost every game. Not the initial ban, but actually she was initial ban a couple times. But she was banned in almost every lobby of the ALGS Open. I'm pretty sure. I haven't looked at the math, but every time I was looking on the mainstream, at least for the winner's side, Alter was getting banned. Game 3, Game 4, sometimes earlier, sometimes later. And it was because she has the ability to pull people back. She has this large range. She has the largest range of any other character in the game. For as a maximum space potential that has an option, has an out. Because one thing you want to do when splitting is always have an out. This is why certain characters fail to be good in the in edge compositions. I'm looking specifically at Maggie with that, because she does a lot of good fighting. She's very, very good fighting. Matter of fact, she's one of the best fighting characters in the game. She just has no survivability in her kit outside of Maggie Ball. And that can be used aggressively and is often encouraged to be used aggressively. Alter Tactical is one of the only abilities in the game that it can be used by opponents and not be punished. Horizon using AQ can be used as a punish. And the thing that makes Alter good as well is she can use it as a punish with kidnapping and cutting angles. But that is based entirely around timing in a fight, and that's based around the fundamentals. That's not based around the character kits, and that's why I say she's a hero shooter character. She knows there's a fundamental kit there. She is playing slightly against it. She's saying, I'm not going to have an ability that is just a positive trade for me. Thinking like Ash Q. Throwing a snare has no downside to you. There is never a bad time to snare on Ash. Matter of fact, the character is so good with those snares that wasting a snare can lose a fight at the highest level. So oftentimes the best thing is to not waste it because it is of high value. So using your snares is never a bad thing on Ash unless you're using it at the wrong time. How does Alter Q work? Alter Q doesn't give you... Alter Q can get you killed. I've seen teams do this 30, 40 times in scrims alone. This character said, I'm not going to gain a positive ability. I want to be able to fuck it up. I want a little more risk for a little more reward. And they've given her a lot of reward, and she's a very high skill scaling character and a very punishing skill floor. You fuck up, you're dead. That's what I love about this character. You don't fuck up, you're almost unkillable. It's this actually razor's edge understanding of fundamentals that is not built into her kit, but plays against it to get ahead, to get an advantage. It's kind of like asking the devs to give me a little bit of their code so that I can use it in a fight. And it's really sick. Now, how the fuck does Sparrow also fit in this bucket? Alter's kit, like Sparrow's kit, is Sparrow versus Alter's kit. Totally different. Alter, you can die taking either of her abilities. You can get punished for her. Sparrow's kit, you can't get punished really. The only way you could really get punished for using your abilities is if you throw a Q and block yourself off from your own movement. Or not a Q, but throw an ult and block yourself off from your own movement. And that's just a mistake. That's an easy mistake to not do. So how is he also someone that breaks the rest of the character lineup that other characters don't do? He's the first implementation of a double like passive value character. Every other character in Apex so far, when released, has some level of just basic value. I'm trying to find a good way to word this. Every kit is a dummies kit. I talked about the no abilities, no ultimate, no passive, base, foundational, fundamental. We are really breaking down what is the difference between movement and fundamentals at a deeper level with this character. Movement is the opening up of opportunities based around non-cooldown and cool, but based around a full set of abilities, based on one's own skill, basically. And what I mean by skill is understanding of placement, map, resources, objectives, and ultimately surviving. Because the only way you can win a tournament in Apex Legends is by surviving after getting match points. And this is where that one of those big changes of Apex again. Evo in between this so that the armor and that resource and the health resources were all kind of organized and not just randomized. And then there was like this shift in, all right, surviving is the only way to win. Being first is the only way to win. How do you survive? Be first place, and you get rewarded for being closer to that. Good system. That's how racing works. Who's the fastest? Him. I was faster than you, so I should be above you, but I wasn't faster than him, should be below him. First, second, third. That's how numbers work. That's how this is how things are. That's nature. So a character composition has to be good at doing two things. Going back again. Character has to be good at doing two things. Surviving, whether that be in the zone, on the edge. Killing, in the zone, on the edge. In the storm, in the gas. Being aware of that condition. Being able to play all three, variably. Being able to escape in all three, variably. Being able to thrive in all three, variably. These are kind of the resources that people base characters around. Gibby in the Gibby Octane Bloodhound meta was the most survivable character. You threw bubble, you lived. There was no punish. And Newcastle Gibby Rampart. Ability, 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 ability. Perfectly timed. You won't get killed. Very interesting meta. Really boring meta. Now we have a difference in what survivability looks like. First off, introduction to the game and mechanics, we have true lifesteal. Perk on his ability. That will be utilized in other characters later. Mark my words. That will be somehow introduced later. even if it's unbalanced now. I don't think it is unbalanced right now. Actually, I think it's the worst perk of the purple. I think the other one's better. I think the small ones are better. Characters provide resources. Characters attain resources. There's levels of detail thought out. This character has everything in the core kit to do all of that. That's what the dummy is. Now, what he does is give the option of adding speed by maneuvering correctly through your environment. It's using environment knowledge checks plus movement to gain a value that other characters don't get by being constantly faster unconditionally. Every other sense of speed has a condition to it. And even this one has conditions to it, but the conditions are more lenient because frankly, if you mess them up, you're more likely to die. It's more risk, more reward. This is where skill ceiling comes in rather than skill floor. Bad skill floor, alter, sparrow. Easy to fuck up, easy to get yourself killed. Um, and as metas develop, as people get smarter and understand the matchups, because matchups, individual 1v1 matchups are now becoming very important because of 3v3s and the compositions and the survivability, that you have to understand what a weakness is in a composition. This character provides very few weaknesses in his kit. So how is he the same as Alter? Going back to that question, how is he the same as Alter in a movement setting? If wise and mighty no socks, if your yapping session is all about legends, it's taken you fucking 51 minutes so far to get this shit going. You haven't even talked about Sparrow yet. How does this apply? Sparrow is the first multiplicative of the basic fundamental passive in the game, and now has changed an idea that was core, used to be just a core fundamental of the game, meaning every character could do it no matter what. That now he has the ability to it's a multiplicative of 2, literally double what other people can do. What value does that bring? And why is it the same as Alter? For anyone who's played card games, mana cheating. Mana cheating is one of my favorite things to do in a card game. You have a thing that reduces the cost of mana in your hand at end of turn. I'm thinking of whatever the fuck that character's card was in Hearthstone. It was a 5 mana, put it out at the end of your turn. Every card in your hand would be reduced by 1 mana, and you could use it in druid decks to create larger combos with a normally 8 cost and 3 cost card. You would have 11 mana. You couldn't do it in a turn. You could then put him out and it would go to a 7 and a 2. Now you had 9 mana. You had 1 mana to play with actually afterwards. And since you had a 2 cost over here, now that's worth 1. I can do that, and that allows me to draw 2 cards. And when I draw 2 cards, like, you have these like combos that are set up by mana cheating. Being able to constantly combo fundamental movement in the video game of Apex Legends is insane value when your goal is to survive. Because surviving means being away from people, means being in the right spot when encountering people, and means providing an advantage when in an encounter that can be beneficial while still providing disadvantages to the enemies, debuffing your enemies by being more maneuverable. Now, what part is it of my kit am I talking about? Not the Q where that goes out. That just gives you more information of taking the right fight. Not his ult, which can bail you out of fights, push other people back, secure kills that enable other fights to happen so that you can actually get better rotates. It's not the passive one that gives you the double jump and goes back with, or gives you the boost up without using your double jump, that can be chained into other momentum from your passive 2, which is just a double jump that's put into any direction that you put into. While also being able to tap strafe out of, and keeps a burst of momentum that can be timed to get around other people's shots while positioning over their head and on their back, which is the weak spot of a person because it's the least survivable, because it's the one part you can't see. It's not that. It's none of that. Still a crazy kit, right? It's the fact that he can do 2 wall climbs. And wall climbs are refreshed and set up when touching the ground and can be chained with fatigue bounces. Because utilization of double those resources of a normal character means that they cannot catch up without using an ability. That is a guaranteed advantage in every scenario. It is only countered by people having to shoot you, which might I remind you, you not only increase your survivability because of the increase of speed and the increase of resource refresh, because you have the fastest resource refresh in your passive one, that more than any other character, because you just need to hit the ground again. You don't even need to hit the ground. You just need a single frame of being on the ground. You don't. Those two things are two options. You not only always have the option to get out, you have variable options to get out, and you are beneficial by your base kit. And in the escape, you increase your odds of surviving being around more corners than your opponent. So, you have the ability to get to corners, get to different corners, get around different corners, get around different corners in different heights, chain heights, climb. This as a base kit. He will never not be good at moving as long as this is in the game. You could get rid of the rest of the kit and he will be a hard character to kill with a good movement player. This is why he's different. He's a hero shooter character. They looked at the fundamentals of the game and they stepped their toes backwards into the development train. We have just seen the crossing of forward thinking from the H1Z1 fundamentals and forward thinking from the hero shooter fundamentals. And they put it in a BR. In the game where surviving is the goal. And of course they would. It's the only place it fits. That's why he's insanely different. That's why Sparrow is going to be one of the most core fundamental movement characters of probably 2025, unless a new game comes out with something. Marathon might contest it later this year. I have my doubts in that though. This is new aged Apex. This is Apex 2. This is totally different from everything we have ever known in this game. Valk was the closest, but the reason Valk doesn't count towards this is because she can't shoot while doing this. It was a trade-off. You could move better, but you can't fight back. At any point in these combos, I can pull my gun and fight back, and I'm not punished for the timing. Matter of fact, if I do it at the right time, I get an advantage. And if I get the right speed and I've pulled one ahead, I have an ISO'd 1v1 with advantage. That sets up a chain for 1v3ing. That can almost guarantee me a way out. It can get me more points in a competitive setting. This character is different. Alter's mana cheating comparison is that trade-off of my abilities can kill me too. And now it's the first trade-off of its kind. It's kind of like playing Warlock in Hearthstone. You know, I'll take 2 of my life, but I get to draw a card. And I don't do anything to you, but I'm gonna be a threat. I will always be able to draw this card as long as I have 3 health. That's a pretty good trade-off in a 30 health game, right? Like that's it. And Sparrow adds that before you think about that survivability. Going back to the initial conversation about the resources and the health of a team and that change, Sparrow adds that on, like, regardless of the team's health. That's his thing, is he can survive. He has a very, very good chance of surviving. When played correctly, when played to the highest skill ceiling. That's why these two characters are totally changing the game, and that's why Apex is a totally different game. I love this shit. This is why I study characters. This is why I've always studied characters, because if you study characters, you're studying the fundamentals of the game. And if you really get down into the details, you can find the truths about how games are designed. Another thing, resource value as a character when talking about all of the legends, resource value. Going back to that point, and why this matters is because the BRB text up here is because you can break characters down into groupings. You have one already: skirmishers, assault, recon, support, controller. Easy way to break it down. Let's break it down in other ways, though. What's a character that is going to be defensive? What defines a defensive character? A character that is better when dropped on than dropping on someone else. Mirage hits ult, goes invis, throws decoys, people get confused, stalls time, defensive character. Catalyst puts goo on doors, puts spikes down, takes time to clear those things before going in. Defensive character. Rampart puts walls up, shoots behind walls. Pretty fucking obviously defensive. Watson fences, stunned when you go through, debuffing people and taking damage while alerting people of the nearby area. Good that's defensive. You need people to walk into it. If you put a fence down and someone doesn't walk into it, it's a useless ability. So it's not useless. Sorry, it's not used in that moment. It's defensive. Caustic barrels, same thing. Newcastle wall, same thing. Loba, you have to have loot in the area, pop it, and then soak it up. You don't just get loot for free. You have to soak it in the area. Defensive, lifeline, resetting, Gibby, bubble, conduit, shielding. Defensive characters. That's what makes them more supportive, anchory characters. What makes a character that's more like an anchor is someone that holds or widens space. So what are recon characters then? Are they more supportive or are they more aggressive? Let's look at the aggressive side. So why is Sparrow in the recon and why is Alter in the skirmisher? If they're so different, why are they classified in this way, and what makes sense this way? Skirmishers and assault are all about the fighting. Control and support are all about the placement. These are win conditions. So usually what you want to see in a composition is one side of, like, the bottom row and one of the top row. Because if you see a team that has Newcastle, Valk, and Catalyst, that's not even a bad comp. Newcastle, Valk, Catalyst is fucking motherfucker with his muffler being so loud out here. I don't know if you can hear it. I hope you can, but it's annoying me. Like a composition like that, why is it considered worse? Or like Caustic, Gibby, Valk, why is it considered worse? It's not considered worse, it's just considered not as effective because it has only one way to maneuver. How do you increase your odds of that? How do you increase your maneuverability? Pick up a skirmisher, pick up an assault character. That's why Valk is in the recon. She gives more information by hitting UAVs, by stunning, by shooting rockets behind rocks for information, by going into the air and seeing people. She gives more information than she actually gives in movement or fighting capabilities. This is also why, but like, there's also a gradient to it when you look at this. And it's color coded. It's literally color coded in the game. Yellow and red are warm colors. These are all cool colors, but purple is a mixture of blue and red. It's supportive yet assaulty. Seer canceling abilities. In essence, what he does is he cancels the support class, but he doesn't really, and he also cancels the assault class, but he doesn't really do damage or get an advantage in doing the damage, nor does he really support people and pick people up off the ground. He's not a character built for that. He just gives information. Vantage kind of does the same thing. She leans more into the assault area, but she has more supportive passive abilities that allow her to just navigate around the map. So she's put into that. Crypto doesn't do a lot of damage, doesn't get out active in the fight. Sounds like an anchor player, sounds like a support character, but he does affect it with EMPs. It's all the Hound's just useless, by the way. So ignore Hound's like literally useless character right now. I don't know why anyone would pick this fucking character. I like if Recon. I just want it to be known. This is how bad this fucker is. If there were 5 characters left and they were the worst 5 characters in a legend band system, I would not play Hound even then. I genuinely don't think Hound would get if in current if it was played for 10 years. This meta and this meta alone, I don't think Hound would get banned once. I think he's that fucking bad. Anyway, um, if but you see the gradient in between the two. So what does Sparrow do? Sparrow doesn't actually. He does damage with his Qs. He can track, but he does damage with his ult. But he also stops people from coming by stunning them. Now he does a lot of the assault and a lot of the support, but he doesn't have a lot of recon outside of just base kit recon. Yeah, he can hit the UAVs. That's his information, really. His Q can hit the UAVs, and frankly, that's why he's here and not up in here. If he couldn't scan the UAVs like that, um, and they added, honestly, I think they could just move him to assault, and he would be. I mean, he would be broken if they moved him to assault, but like making a comparative kit, it's as close as it gets. But that's this kind of gradient between the two. Now, what is a skirmisher? Skirmisher doesn't provide shit for the team other than getting people in the fight or out of the fight. And the rest of their kit is almost selfish. Alter being good is because she's selfish for more power, but she's not selfish for what the ability does, and that's what counters her is other people doing that shit. Um, is taking her Q, taking her port back. That is what makes her very unique, and the ability to move people is like CC. This is why they give her the support class. Why do they give her the recon class as the other passive, and for her level 2? I personally believe is because they understand this idea of mana cheating, and they want to start branching a kind of what I like to call mana cheat character. Someone who gets a natural advantage by using one of their abilities that can be a punish as well. That like higher risk, higher reward. That kind of contract with the devil that a character might do. Devil being the devs, and us being the lowly souls that the contract is written on. The players. Alter has more of that. Sparrow has more of that. Ashe has been kind of pseudo developed into this in the assault class. Fuse also has a bit of this. Fuse has the control perk. So, Mirage has everyone else's perks, but doesn't get Evo. So this is where you have like a classification of mana cheaters. This is one of the ways that you can change how you look at characters. Are characters who branch out into more resources. All of them: Fuse, Vantage, Sparrow, Mirage, Pathfinder, and Alter. Yeah. Yes. Just triple check. They should change Hound into a controller. Anyway, but these are the kind of managers. There's 5 of them. That's one of the ways you can classify a new legend, and one of the reasons why these legends, like Mirage, is getting picked. Why is Mirage getting picked ever? Why is Tworkaholics playing a character like Mirage? Because he has everything that you need. He's got it. He does it. He does it all. And when you're trying to just run it down and pick up everything on the weak side of the points to soak it up, that's a character that's really ideal for that. Where you're trying to cheat the rest of the game fundamentally by playing a resource that other people aren't playing, well, he's a great character for that. This is why Mirage is still getting picked. Fuse is massively getting picked for this. Alter is getting picked for this. This is, frankly, this is what I think encouraged people to use her in comp, and one of the reasons why she's a better comp character. If you gave these perks to Wraith, um, and swapped this kind of idea over to Alter, Wraith would be better than Alter, guaranteed, I think. For a competitive setting, for a movement setting, for the highest skill ceiling individualistically for that 3v3, Alter would be better. But, when you talk about overall resources for the Battle Royale, for the H1Z1 side of it, then a character like Wraith would be better if they had Alter's perks. It's because both of them provide a rotate, but one provides a rotate and some other good benefits that are very beneficial. And Void Breacher is massive for micro rotating. So also, like, hits the macro, hits the micro. Beautiful character design in that regard. And this is why it's like Wraith was released first. This was released second to last right now, as it stands. Isn't that's not power creep though, personally. Because they've adjusted Wraith to have a different role. She provides 2-point places. Alter provides 1 point to return from until she gets another ult. It's like 2 ults to do what she does, 1 ult to do what she does for less time. It's that trade-off. That's one of the ways to look at it, is the mana cheat characters, the characters that interact over. I also like looking at fuck-up characters. Fuck-up characters are when someone shits the bed and you gotta unshit it. You gotta unshit the bed. How do you unshit the bed? Gibraltar, Lifeline, Mirage, Newcastle, Alter, Wraith to an extent, Ash to an extent, Catalyst kind of, Rampart kind of, Watson kind of. These are what I like to call the truly defensive characters, because it takes a mistake, it takes a loss of resource to play to pick up. You have to kind of sacrifice yourself a bit, or it's more used as a barrier in high level play, because the idea to actually make a mistake to get value is a bad line of thought always. Making mistakes is never a thing you want to do. So that's why they had their meta, because ultimately making the mistake wasn't ever punished, because the meta couldn't compete with it on the other side, that damaging side. Now it can, so it's not as effective, but it does help, because every time you get people up faster, the more you survive, the more that total health goes back up. Boom, the less you die. That probability, that initial thing I talked about fucking 73 minutes ago, brings itself back around. That's why I talked about it. That's why I got this long. That's frankly why I just wanted to go on this session. That's why these things are important. Those are your fuck up characters. Those are I like to call them insurance characters. Oh, you fucked up? Insurance. Support by passive has insurance. You get the Moby when you craft. So it takes half of when you think about someone fully dies. Every time someone goes down, you have to pick them up. That's one action to pick someone, to pick up 2 people. That's a net loss of micro play, but can be a net win in macro play to keep yourself alive. That's the good passive of the support, and that's why they're very, very strong at that. God damn it. These things, these resources also have a downside. So when they don't go off, or not, they have another upside, just when they don't go off. That when someone goes down, you pick them up. When someone fully dies, you have to craft them, then res them. So it goes from doing a one-step process to a two-step process. Supports cut out the middleman. It's always a one-step process. That's your insurance. Control characters don't do that, but if it is within the area, they make it easier to recover from it. That's the difference between the two classes here. But the idea of being defensive and having defensive capabilities sits with a lot of other characters. Crypto also does this because he provides the most direct visual information of the map compared to any other character. Sparrow provides the most passive movement of any other character. Alter provides the best as the crow flies on the low ground over any other character. Like Wraith still has to go around buildings. She can go through buildings. And any character that has the word instant in the abilities details seems to be pretty fucking good. That's every single time pretty fucking good. In any game I've played, Flash has always been one of the best summoner spells, if not the best summoner spell for the entirety of League of Legends career because it is instant. And that's a game all about information. So if you play information, Alter becomes better, and she has the best ability to collapse on certain information that increases survivability and fighting potential. So she's hybrid. That's what makes her a very good character and why she's one of the characters that gets banned over something like Wraith. Pathfinder provides one thing of information provides the option of two things of information in one spot, which is why he's not meta and why Alter is. This might change with the passive changes that they've done to Zipline Zen, but still, I think Alter's going to be better and is better character design. But this is old school versus new school. One was looking from H1Z1, do one thing, have two options. This is looking from the hero shooter, do two things with one ability, but the option is using which over the other in a cooldown. And that's where it changes in that sort of fundamental guide. That's the evolution of it. Characters that have advantages in fighting are characters that can do one of two things: provide hypermobility in some capacity that can catch a team, or catch a player, or catch something of high value in a fight. Send grenades. That's what I'm trying to think of. Like send grenades, or provide information while providing cover, while providing damage, while providing damage, while providing damage and gun silence, which is the stupidest fucking ability in the game. Provides mobility, vertical mobility. Some of the best team vertical mobility in the game, Horizon, still to this day. Alter has kind of contested that with the condition of a wall. Horizon doesn't need it. Because Horizon doesn't need it, Horizon also gets the advantage of throwing the Q at someone else's spot, and they can no longer play that spot for the duration of the Q. And provides information that people might be behind it. Octane can get his whole team a short distance very quickly. He is worse than almost every other character here outside of Horizon in terms of getting a whole team a horizontal distance. But Horizon, counters that with the vertical distance. Mobility is one thing. All of these characters outside of Fuse provide, on the assaultive side, provide mobility. These are the aggressive characters. These are the defensive characters. So what are recon? And why is it recon? Is it just recon? What makes it so unique with this class? Why is Sparrow here? Recon is the hybrid between the two. Kind of talked about that earlier with the basic ability and like moving him up to the assault, and the basic passives, the basic kit. Recon does half of both, like half of these. So, what's another way you could classify characters? You have assault characters, you have defense characters, you not assault, you have aggressive characters, you have defensive characters, and then you have flex characters. Flex characters, I like to put are the ones that do all three of these things to some extent. They are aggressive, they are defensive, and they provide information. Newcastle is straight defensive. He has defensive tactical ability, defensive ultimate. The best way to kind of look at all of this is look at the passive, look at the tactical, look at the ultimate. If they do one of each thing, they're very flexible. If they do two and one, but one can kind of work as two things, very flexible, or considered more of a flexible character. If they do majority of one thing, definitively they are more of the defensive or the aggressive. Maggie, assault, assault, assault. One assault has the passive of giving information, of you cue somebody, they burn, that's information. You get the ticks on that, you get the passive warlord. Actually, you don't get that anymore. Um, that's the advantage she gets at that. Wrecking Ball can provide mobility, speed up in the direction of the wrecking ball is going. Also provides a stun, very aggressive, often used to stun teams and give an advantage in the fight, or break abilities. This is why she's more of a flex character. Um, and also why she kind of sucks. She doesn't really do any one of those things great, besides hitting the gas pedal. And you have characters that hit the gas pedal the same, but then do other things. Example, Ash. Example, Ballistic. Ballistic ult speeds you up, gives you reload, and gives you infinite ammo. Or gives you reload speed and gives you infinite ammo. He also has the ability to cut other people off from shooting, so he has a guaranteed advantage when getting into a fight. But he doesn't provide shit else all for the team. That's it. Everything else is for him. It can be good. It can be utilized for the team on a fundamental level, but it's shit all else for him. Like, it's all for him and shit all else for the rest of the team. So he's just very aggressive. But he's better than Maggie because he does what Maggie kind of wants to do and just kind of half-asses with everything. And he just hits the gas pedal. But that's it. He has nothing else to him. That's why people pump ult cells into him. That if you want to know when a character's all in on something, they have ult cells. That's what the character is all about. Is popping that ultimate, is getting that resource, and we'll get to resources, ultimates, and abilities in a second again after this. Fuse provides defensive value by ulting a specific area off. You can cut off buildings, you can cut off rotates, you can cut off areas. Fuse, very good. Provides a bit of information too. Pop ulti, it's around someone in a building, you can see them. Wall hacks, great, always nice to know. Q can provide information around corners or on doors, breaking doors, giving an advantage. Doors are considered valuable because they are movable pieces of cover and they take 2 kicks to break and preconditions to be met to break. Otherwise, Fuse breaks doors, plus value. Catalyst makes doors, plus value defensively. Breaking doors offensive, making doors defensive. What a surprise. Bang provides cover and information. But she doesn't actually give information. She just denies information. So she stuffs out information, making her a aggressive character. She's in the aggressive step forward, but she is the defensive aggressive step. She also has bonuses for herself that she provides to create advantages, like skirmishers. Same thing with Ballistic, same thing with Maggie. Gibby does this well a little bit with the shotgun passive, but that's a perk, so we don't talk about that. Ash provides that rotational ability that skirmishers have as her ult. It's very clear. It's mostly used for her, but also in comp. It's mostly used for the team. Getting cutoffs in fights, very valuable. It's not a fast cooldown. It has limited range compared to the other characters, but is still highly valuable. The snare can help stop a team defensively or stun a team down offensively. Flexible value. Her passive is bonus movement, like what Sparrow has, except it's on a longer cooldown and is very straightforward. It doesn't have any other comboing abilities. The comboing ability is what makes this character, Sparrow, so strong and pushes him forward in the new age of Apex. Um, he's also personally he's one of the only characters that fundamentally, if you play this character correctly, in every situation, you have an out outside of just straight dead ends where you're gonna die anyway. And because of that, he's one of the only characters that makes ballistic slightly like he's one of the only movement characters that really outshines ballistic. Because ballistic will set up your if ballistic cues you right, and when you're trying to kite out a fight, you lose. Um, which is why being ballistic cued feels so painful as a movement player when it's done correctly. But he can actually just by his passive abilities outlast the advantage that ballistic has, and he can outlast his ult if done correctly too. I mean, it's 45 seconds of kiting at peak. Like that shit can be fucking miserable to do, but it's not impossible. And Alter has 30 seconds of stall in her kit. So by nature, ballistic just wins that advantage. And it hurts to see that and say that, but it's also the truth. And that's why like ballistic was the only real counter to Alter, and it's one of the big reasons ballistic is really good right now is because Alter is really good, and this is where legend bans come in. Um, and the before the legend bans, the last explanation I want to do specifically about Sparrow here is Sparrow with the ability to do double the passive movement of other characters in terms of flexibility and in terms of kind of gas pedal on the non cooldown abilities. Both of these advantages that are provided are abilities. So anytime that you can survive as Sparrow for longer than an ability, you have reduced the usage of one ability in a fight. Non cooldown abilities force cooldowns, cooldowns force ultimates, ultimates force positions, is kind of how Apex plays. Positions are increases and decrease. Better positions are increases and decreases in survivability. Better conditions are increases of survivability. Worst positions are decreases of survivability. These two elements are what determine God spots. And this is where different play styles can come in, and this is why legend bans are going to be so impactful. Is banning out a legend reduces their combo ability, because remember, we're talking about the highest echelon. We have to think of every detail. We've been looking at the individual legends. We were talking about the compositions. This is where they come together. This is where we have individual meeting, team comp versus team comp, and advantages and disadvantages in the fight, and how that changes fighting altogether. Compositions like to have characters that are high in the range of map coverage. This is your rotational character. Why? Because if you need to run away, if a team has this character, you can still get out. People want to chase you. These are your chase potentials. That's why skirmishers are not supports. They're the aggressors and the rotators, because they want to cut through space more often. The way to counter that, the rock paper scissors of this is that you have the ability to not need to run. Heavy defense then counters the aggression. What counters defense? Positioning. What is positioning? Fundamentals. What is best found? Where is the best place to find fundamentals and characters? Flex characters. Flex characters can outmaneuver people because they have more tools and more resources. It's a having 3 tools in a toolbox versus having 12 tools in a toolbox fundamental, with ability and compositions put together. Having a character that can always have an advantage in micro movement, characters like Alter, characters like Sparrow that are based around the hero's kits, but then having less impactful kits on the in that moment otherwise, is the hero element, looking at the H1Z1 element, like I talked about for the fourth time or whatever it is now, coming together in the 3v3, which the 3v3 is the development of the BR broken down into the highest level fundamentally. It's all these little things coming together, one thing after another, after another. All three elements come down to the math of the probability of surviving a situation, because placement is what gets you wins. But the 3v3, the compositions in 3v3 are what develop the fighting is what develops the compositions. You need to have the ability to escape, get out. That's what the skirmishers are for. That's what those rotators are for. The ability to stop people from rotating directly into you faster than you can rotate out. That's what your defensive characters are for. Your flexible characters are there so that you can make sure that you actually outmaneuver other teams if they start playing defensive, because assault breaks down because when you spread too wide to get better positions on a team, being the individual being spread and split, the 3 can go eat a 1 and now it's a 3v2. At that point, the fighting, the distance has to be dilated right, otherwise the 3 can devour a 1 and then they have an advantage. And oftentimes with the 3, if you're playing defensively, you have a character that gets a reset. So if it's a 1-for-1, you are now losing. So defensive it's like rock, paper, scissors, but every team comp has a rock, a paper, and a scissors. And you have to kind of like line up rock, paper, scissors. You're like, I'm going to play paper first, then scissors, then rock. And your opponent plays paper, then rock, then scissors. Those two trade out, and you got a 1v1. And then it comes down to gun skill. The reality is it all comes down to gun skill. Any team that, like, team compositions don't actually matter if you just get fucking crabered. Right? Like, that's the BR element. That's the H1Z1. That's the thing we can't get rid of. If you got rid of it, it wouldn't be a BR anymore. The crabering, you can a little bit. But the if you fuck up the gunfight, you lose mentality. When I talked about Sweet Dreams versus Hal, Sweet Dreams understood that everything we talked about before, and Hal understood, if I shoot you better, I will win. And because people left those gaps, like I said almost an hour ago, catches itself. If you leave mistakes, people capitalize on. So compositions are now built around, and now you have to build around a composition that can beat other comps, survive other comps, and outmaneuver other comps. Like kill other comps quick, stop other comps from killing you, and survive. That's the new age Apex Legends. It used to be 3 people running around in gunfights, and now it's 3 characters designed and developed. And the reason bans used to be one way at the start, whereas we're going to ban all of one class, is because one class was too dominant. Now we're seeing the best of each class banned because the entire compositions based around it are too impactful. That's Apex Legends. That's the new Legends. That's the Legends system. That's everything. That's it. There's nothing else. There's nothing more. I'm exhausted. I need some water, and I have to piss. I am probably going to upload this to YouTube. Sick. All right. I'm going to end stream. I'll be on in like an hour playing this game. Holy. I just needed to yap. I had the music in the background for me. I just needed to yap. Thank you for everybody who listens to this. It probably won't be anyone but me. Messiah can maybe someone else. I don't know. This might be the worst stream I've ever done. I don't